Good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Kesubos Daf Kaf Aleph, and we're starting at a new mission at the bottom of Chaf and Beis. Today we're going to be speaking about some of the parameters of verifying edus and shtaros. And the Mishnah opens with a machlokes in the Tanaim. Ze Omer, if one of the two signatories says, Zek Sav Yadi, Zek Sav Yado Shel Chaveri, the top signature is mine, the second signature is my friend. And the other guy says the same thing. Ze Omer, Zek Sav Yadi, Zek Sav Yado Shel Chaveri, the second signature is mine, and the first one belongs to my friend. Hare Elun He'eman, and these people are trusted, and therefore the document is considered valid because the signatures have been verified as valid. Ze Omer Zek Sav Yadi, but if one person only speaks about his own handwriting, I can only tell you about number one, I don't recognize my friend's handwriting. Ze Omer Zek Sav Yadi, and the other one says, I recognize the second signature, which is mine, but I don't know the first guy's. Rabbi says we need to add in another person to verify each signature. Meaning, if signature A is Ruvain and signature B is Shimon. So if signature A is Ruvain and Ruvain says, I know my handwriting but not Shimon's, and Shimon says, I know my handwriting but not Ruvain's, that's only one witness on each name. So therefore, we have to bring in another witness from the shuk in order to verify that these signatures are considered valid and that the edus is therefore valid. But the Chachamim argue with this. The Chachamim omrim, we don't need to add in another person. We don't need to bring in another person. We don't need to aid him in regards to the signatures because a person is trusted to say, this is my handwriting. So that's the machlokas here. And the Gemara is going to tell us what the deeper issue is going on here. Kishetim Salomar, if you were going to come to say that something here, Rashi fills in the gaps. It says Kishetim Salomar, Rashi says Kshetamo L'sof Dvarav. When you get to the very underbelly of what each of these shitas hold, here's what you'll find. The Gemara says the Divrei Rebbe, according to the Tana Kama in our Mishnah, Al Ksav Yadan Heim Meidin. The testimony is on the graphology. It's on the actual handwriting. It's not about the content. We're not verifying the content. We're verifying the signatures, which in turn verify the content. But I'm focused on the chasimas, I'm focused on the signatures. However, L'divrei Chachamim, top of Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, top line, according to the Chachamim, they're not focused on the signatures, and therefore they only need the edus of one person to say, this is my signature, no problem, we trust you. What do they focus on? Almana shebishtar he'me'idim. We're not testifying on the signatures, we're testifying on the content of the document, and that is, this guy owes somebody else $100. So what are our thresholds for trustworthiness of a document? Is it that we have verified the signatures of the Eidim with Eidim? That's Rebbe. Or no, the signatures come with their own territory and we can verify themselves. But really the Eidus that we care about that requires two Eidim is the testimony itself of the content of the shtar. Says the Gemara, that's a very nice analysis, but it seems to be pretty obvious. Like if we read the Mishnah and we read it carefully, we probably would have inferred the same thing. So it says the Gemara Pshita. It's obvious that this should have been the sof. What did Rashi say? The sof Dvarav. That this should be the conclusion of each of their opinions. Says the Gemara, that's not true. Mahu detema. What might I have said? I might have argued that Rebbe Sfuke Mesafkale, that when Rebbe said in our Mishnah that that we needed the two people to check the first two witnesses, that's not necessarily true. Maybe it was only a suffix. Maybe he wasn't sure, and he was going to be strict on both. What would the nafkamina be if he was besafek? So it says the Gemara, if he was Sfuke Mesafkale, then 5 lines down, the nafkamina hecha demischad minayu, that had it been that really Rebbe said he wasn't really sure about whether or not we need to aid him, and then one of the signatories died, and hecha demischad minayu, he died, then in the Reish of our Mishnah, when Rebbe said that we need to bring in another person, so then over here, he might need to bring in 2 other people. Din Kain, because if you don't, kanafik nechiriva demamona apum dechad sada, then you'll be taking all of the money minus a fourth. Nechi means less than. A riva is a quarter, and demamona, there's going to be only 1/4 of the money will not.
We call that 3/4.
We call that, that's why the Gemara is it's backwards language, right? So basically, because of the one testimony of the man who's alive still, then it's as if, and the Gemara doesn't mean this literally, but it's as if 3/4 of the edus is coming, it's 3/4 of the money on the shtar will come because of this one man's edus. And had it been that really Rebbe was was besafek, then he should have required 2 edim in such a case and not 1. But he didn't do that. Kamash malan to Rebbe mifshat pshitale. According to Rebbe, there is no safek at all. We might have thought that maybe Rebbe was a safek in our Mishnah. Kamash malan that it's not at all. And bein lekula, bein lechumra, there are times that he'll be lenient and times that he'll be strict. Where do we see this machlokes expressed in the Amoraim? The Gemara says about 10 lines down, to Amar of Yehuda Amar Rav. You have 2 people who signed on a shtar, and 1 man died. So the Gemara says, we do need 2 people, but how do we apply this to our machlokes? Bezu Rebbe lekula v'Rabbanan lechumra. Here we see that Rebbe is lenient, and therefore we see that Rebbe wasn't mesupak at all. Rebbe knew exactly what was going on. He doesn't require 2 people from the shuk to verify this signature. He only requires 1, and that shows us, like we said in the beginning of the Gemara that started on the bottom of Chaf Amud Beis, that if we get to the very pnim, the very depths of each of their shitas, that it's, as we said, that the Tanakama is of the opinion that we need to verify the signatures, and the Chachamim are of the opinion that we need to verify the content of the shtar. Says the Gemara, according to the Chachamim, if there aren't 2 people in the shuk who recognize this signature, what would the Chachamim do? So it says the Gemara, a ruse, a very clever solution, third of the way down, Chaf Aleph Amar Aleph. Amar Abaye, maybe what we should have said is lichtov chasimas yade achaspa. The one of the edim, he should take his signature, write it on a shard of pottery, and he should throw it into the bezdin. V'shadi lebebeidina, and then bezdin is going to see the shtar, and they're going to see this guy's signature on this piece of pottery. They're going to be like, oh, this guy has got the same exact signature. And then then we don't need any testimony at all about this guy's testimony. And then the guy who's alive and the one guy from the shuk that they found, they can go testify for the other person. Fine, a clever ruse. And that's how we solve for the question of the Chachamim, that according to the Chachamim, that they do require 2 people from the shuk to verify the signature when 1 person died. So here, that's how we get around this concern of the Gemara. Now, in regards to this ruse that we did, where we signed on a piece of pottery and we threw the pottery into Bezdin, says the Gemara, the dafka achaspa, it has to specifically be on something that's similar to a shard of pottery. Why? Aval amigilta lo, on a Megillah, on a scroll, we don't allow that. When I was a little kid, there was this scene in one of the cartoons where Bugs Bunny would have someone sign just the bottom of a piece of paper, and afterwards he would go back in and write down, I hereby forego all of my belongings to Bugs Bunny, right? So here the Gemara says, what's the concern about the Megilta? Says the Gemara, Dilma mishkach la inish de lo mali. Maybe we'll find a person who is not refined. The kasav ilave my deboy. And if I take a Megillah and I write Phil Karesh on the bottom, someone's going to go over there and they'll be like, oh, Givaldig. I'm so honored to be able to lend this person $10,000, and the conditions of collection are 1, 2, and 3, paid by Davex. So says the Gemara, that's our concern. And even though this was done without edus per se, it's just my signature. Like normally in halachic terms, where, like in America, John Hancock, like that's like everything, you sign everything away. You've all had mortgages before? Oh my God. You want to buy a stamp just for that one day. You're signing your name 50 times. Where does a signature come up in halachic literature? We're normally focused on Eidim. So there's a Mishnah that's quoted right here that actually has an application for where we would use a signature. V'tznan, almost halfway down. Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Hotzi alav ksav yado shu chayav lo goba min achasim b'nei chorin. That if there is a document that has my signature on it, that's the evidence that I actually owe you something. It's not as strong as Eidim. You're right, it's not as strong as Eidim, but the document seemingly means something. And therefore, when we're going to use this ruse to verify that a signature is real, and we're going to put my name on a piece of pottery and it has to be pottery. It has to be something that you can't write a shtar on. And therefore, we use chaspa and not megilta. How do we paskin between the 2 shitas in our Mishnah? Do we paskin like the shita of Rebbe, where Rebbe holds that we need to verify the Eidim themselves, and therefore what the contents of the shtar will be fine? Or no, do we need to only verify the contents of the shtar, and we don't have to worry about the Eidim? That's the Chachamim. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha k'divrei Chachamim. So that should have been obvious, because we know that in the Klalei Hapsak that Yachid v'Rabim halacha k'Rabim. So the Gemara calls it up. Pshita. Thank you very much, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. You haven't taught me very much, because everybody knows, even we in our generation, we couldn't possibly know less if we tried. And here, what we know, everybody knows it should be the Chachamim. Says the Gemara, Pshita. No, it's not so Pshita. What should have been the Pshita? That Yachid v'Rabim halacha k'Rabim. So why would we ever assume that the halacha is like Rebbe? So the Gemara responds, in the Klale Hapsak, whenever Rebbe has a one-on-one machlokas with someone, we always side with Rebbe. So then maybe I would have thought ve'afilu mechave rav in the plural. Maybe even if there were chachamim, maybe Rebbe was so significant in his power for psak that he would override the majority. Kamash malan that's not correct. You're right that Rebbe mechave ro, but not Rebbe mechave rav. Rebbe in every one-on-one will win, but Rebbe against any group of people will lose. These are very important Gemaras for following general psakim. If you're a posek and you have to learn a sugya beginning to end, you need to know these things because, whatever, the Shulchan Aruch will point them out, but in learning, you need to know like what the mahalach is, who do we paskin like in general, Rav Shmuel halacha ke'ex, but in dinim, okay, we have to know all these things. That's what the Gemara says here. That brings us to the two dots a little bit more than halfway down. Siman, nach, nad, and chad. So 3 words to help us remember what's going on here. Amar le Rav Chinana bar Chia the Rav Yehuda. Some say that it was Rav Chinana who said to Rav Yehuda, V'amri la Rav Huna bar Yehuda the Rav Yehuda, or it was the son of Rav Yehuda who was Rav Huna to his father. V'amri la Rav Chia bar Yehuda the Rav Yehuda. Everyone agrees that the recipient of this comment was Rav Yehuda, and we'll see in a moment why. We're just not sure who said it to him. Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi. You just said a line ago, Yehuda Amar Shmuel, that the halacha is like Rebbe. But that's not true because we see an example. You just said a few lines ago that the halacha is not like Rebbe, the halacha is like the Chachamim. But we see an example where Shmuel himself says that the halacha seems to be like Rebbe. Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi, did Shmuel really say that the halacha is like the Chachamim? What's the problem? There was a particular document that came across the desk of the Bezdin of Shmuel. It said on it as follows: there was a person came to Bezdin, it was Rav Onan bar Chia. He testified on his own signature and on the signature of his friend. Umanu, who was his friend? It was Rav Chanan bar Rabba. And then the flip side, that the exact same thing happened with guy number 2. Umanu Rav Onan bar Chia. And Ishrunhi bekimunhi kidechazi. So this Gemara seems to be a replica of the sheet of Rebbe in our Mishnah. Remember the beginning of our Mishnah on the bottom of Chafamud Beis. There we said that if a man said Ksav Yadi v'zeh Ksav Yado shel Chaveri, and the other guy said Zeh Ksav Yadi v'zeh Ksav Yado shel Chaveri, that we say he's Naaman. That's Rebbe through and through. And Shmuel's quoting that exact case here, 2/3 of the way down on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. So how can Yehuda Amar Shmuel tell me that Shmuel holds that the halacha is like the Chachamim? Hare Shmuel himself held that not like that in regards to this particular case that's quoted over here. And Ishruni v'kimunhi v'kimnohi kidechazi. And he verified and established this star to be correct in his Bezdin, but not like the Chachamim. He did so like Rebbe. So that's a stira. How can Yehuda say that his Rebbe Shmuel would say that the halacha is like Shmuel, that the halacha is like the Chachamim when Shmuel himself doesn't agree? The Gemara responds, you always need context. When you're a posek and somebody calls you with a question, you need to know exactly what questions to ask. And the Gemara responds here, Amar leha, hu shtara di yasme hava. That star was for a yasom, and there we're much more sensitive to yasomim than we are to regular people who are not yasomim. V'chash Shmuel lebezdin ton. Shmuel was concerned that someone was likely to make an error. What was his concern? V'savar Shmuel, 10 lines, 12 lines from the bottom. V'savar Shmuel, dilma ika desvir le halacha kerebi mechavero v'lo mechaverav. Maybe somebody will hold that the halacha is like Rebbe only when it's against his friend and not his friends. And here, maybe even over here, he would be lenient. I should say he should be strict and hold against the Chachamim. So therefore, Savar Avid Ravcha ki hechidelo mifsede yasme. This case is unique. You can't learn anything from this case about Shmuel's general psakim, because here Shmuel was bending over backwards to protect Yisomim, and that's a beautiful thing to do. We always have to take care of people who are in complex situations. That's what Shmuel was doing. So therefore, the question that they asked on Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel to say, how dare you say that Shmuel said the halacha is like the Chachamim? It seems over here that the halacha, that's not a valid question. That star that we were dealing with was a star for Yisomim, and we were just being more sensitive. 6-7 lines from the Gemara, from the bottom of the Gemara, Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, aid v'dayan mitzdarfen. If you have an aid and you have the dayan, they can come together to testify on a signature. Amar Rami bar Chama, Kama ma'alya hashmaisa, what a beautiful vort. Says the Gemara, Rava responding, not really so beautiful. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, my me'alyusa, what's so great about this aid and dayan giving edus together? Aid v'dayan mitzdarfen. My de kamasid sahada lo kamasid daina. That which the witness that the aid is coming to testify in Bezdin, that's not what the dayan is looking at. The aid watched the signature. The dayan verified a signature. That's not the same thing. They're looking at different things. If I'm an aid, I say I saw Yaakov signing this document. But if I'm the dayan, I'm looking at it saying I know that this is someone's handwriting. That's not the same edus. So says the Gemara, "Ma'ide kamasid sahada lo kamasid daina." That which the aid is testifying about, the dayan is not testifying about, and conversely, and what the dayan is looking at is not the same thing as what the aid is looking at. So therefore, says the Gemara, that we clearly don't have a great appreciation for this line of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel of aid v'dayan mitzdarfen. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel is having a rough day. He just got knocked out of the water 30 seconds ago from his previous comment, or at least attempted to. And here it's happening again. And now the Gemara tells a story, which really is we're beating him while he's down. Elaki Asam, Rami Bar Yechezkel, when Rami Bar Yechezkel showed up, Omar, he said, Lo tatzisinu lahani klali dechayal Yehuda achi mishmei de Shmuel. I don't want you to listen to any of the things that Yehuda says about his Rebbe Shmuel. Now, of course, we're familiar with the historical context that Rabbi Yehuda learned both under Rav and under Shmuel. So there's more going on here. There's more going on here. Who did he learn from? Shmuel. No, you can accept this Torah from Rav. Don't accept this Torah. There's more going on here, but that's what the Gemara indicates. Is that Rami Bar Yechezkel said that we cannot even listen to Yehuda Bar Shmuel. That brings us to the top of Daf Chav Aleph Amud Beis. We're going to be going until where are we going to? Until close to the bottom of the page, and then we'll stop. 3 lines to the bottom of the page. Ikla Rav Noe Achva de Reb Chia Bar Abba Lemizban Shumshimi. So Rav Noe, who was a family member of Chia Bar Abba, he went to go buy sesame seeds. For us, we buy them in a small container in Jewel. They come in one of the spice cabinets, in one of the spice containers. They were probably buying much larger versions of it. So it says the Gemara, V'amar Hachi Amar Shmuel, Eid v'dayan mitzdarfen. And when he showed up, he quoted the line that we just blew out of the water. And he said, look at this beautiful idea that Eid v'dayan are mitzdarfen, that an aid and a dayan can combine together for edus. Omar Ameimar, oh, how beautiful is that? Kama ma'alya hashmaisa, that's beautiful. Says the Gemara, Omar le Rav Ashi le Ameimar mishum de kalsa avuch de imech. Just because your the father of your mother, who was Rami Bar Chama, I didn't know this, the Meforshim explained, that's what Rashi says. Therefore, at nami mekalsasla, you're also going to praise that line. Don't you know kvar parcha Rava? Rava already destroyed that comment. There's nothing to even talk about. The line's not even valuable. So therefore, we see that Shmuel's comment over here was subject to question. The Gemara is now going to dig into this a little bit. We're going to come back to the Eid V'dayan momentarily. Says the Gemara at the 2 dots, 5 lines down on Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, Amar Rav Safra, Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta, Amar Rav Huna. So that's the first possible collection of names that we have. The Amrela, some say that the following line was said by a different chain of people. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. So one of the two. Shlosha sheyashvu l'kaim es hashtar. If there were 3 dayanim that sat to verify a document, Shnayim makir chasimos yedei edim ve'echad eino makir. 2 of the 3 dayanim, Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi are the dayanim, not brothers. Ruvain and Shimon recognize the signatures of Chaim and Yehuda, but the third dayan, Levi, doesn't recognize the signature. So what should we do? So says the Gemara, Ad shelo chasmu, prior to the signing of that shtar, me'idin b'fanav v'chosem, we give testimony. The 2 dayanim give testimony to the 3rd dayan, and then we sign. Misha chasmu, but once it's already signed, ein me'idin b'fanav v'chosem, we don't give testimony to the 3rd person and then have the dayan verify. Says the Gemara, mikasvina, that doesn't seem to make any sense. You're going to write it even though we weren't sure that it was his signature. The 2 out of the 3 dayanim knew, but Levi didn't know. You're going to sign a whole document with dayanim before this guy knows. It doesn't even make any sense. V'amar Rav Papa mishmei de Rava, hi Ashrisa Dedaini, this certification process of judges, the Nichtov Mekame, that was written in front of us, the Nichvu Sadia Chasimas Yadayu, where we're going to rely upon someone's signatures that are there, Psula. It has to be that the signatures are on something that's accurate. The Mischaze Kishikra, looks like you're lying. So here too, in our case as well, Hachanami Mischaze Kishikra. If you have all the Dayanim sign their names, but they haven't even given testimony to the third Dayan yet, what are you doing? It just, the whole thing looks ridiculous. The third Dayan is going to be like, I know my name's on there, but I don't know, I didn't say that. You can't sign someone's name unless they're ready to sign their name. So therefore, we have to make sure that he knows about it first. So therefore, Elaima, we have to correct the second part of this line of Rav. How are we going to correct it? Above, we said, Ad Shelo Chasmu, and here we're going to change it. It's not signing. Ad Shelo Kasvu, before it's written down, just the content, Me'idin Befanav V'chosein. Then we can testify in front of the third Dayan. The first two Dayanim can explain to the third Dayan. Misha Kasvu, but once they wrote down the testimony, of course he can't sign his name. Once he wrote down the testimony, in Me'idin Befanav V'chosein, that's not right. And the Gemara says halfway down on Chafalaf Amud Beis, Shmami Natzlas, we can learn three things from this Gemara. First of all, Shma Mina Eid Nasa Dayan. Oh, we're back to our sugya. The first thing that we can see is that an aid can be turned into a Dayan. How is that the case? Because we have two Eidim who are functioning as Eidim to testify to the third Dayan. What's happening here? So Eidim can become Dayanim. That's inference number one. Vishma Mina, the second thing we infer, and these two things we're going to reject, but the second two things that we infer are as follows. Vishma Mina, Dayanin hamakir and chasimos yad Eidim einan tzrichin laha'id bifneihem, that if there are Dayanim who can verify the signatures on their own, nobody else needs to give testimony to them. And thirdly, that if there are dayanim who don't know one of the signatures and the other two do, we need to testify. The two dayanim need to testify in front of that third dayan to make sure that everybody knows that all the dayanim know that the signatures are authentic. Rav Ashi doesn't like the latter two. The latter two inferences, the Shmami Natzlas, he doesn't like the latter two. Maski Flo Rav Ashi, Bishlama Eit Nasadayan Sheminan Mina. I totally understand that from the statement of Rav, where he said that 2 out of the 3 Eidim knew about the signatures, that these 2 Dayanim had to sit in front of the third Dayan and verify. Shmamina, not Shmamina, Shaminan Mina. That we can infer. Ella, what I don't agree with, says the Gemara, says Rav Ashi, is your second two inferences from our case. We had said that Dayanin hamakirin chasimas de'edim and tzrichan lahai bifneim. Says the Gemara, that's not true. Dilma la'olam emalach tzrichan. Maybe we really do need testimony on these signatures. V'shayni hacha to kamekayma hagada bechad. Because it may be different, because we had the 2 Eidim who were Dayanim. They sat there and they gave testimony to their friends. So maybe that case is different. And really, had they not done that, we would have needed it. We would have needed there to be Haggadah. We don't know. And the third thing that you tried to imply, which was, and we're 2/3 of the way down, that which we said, that when one of the Dayan doesn't know what's going on, so then we have to teach him, says the Gemara, not necessarily. Dilma la'olam eimalach ein tzrichin. Really, we don't need to teach the third Dayan. But here it was different because we had nobody else entering Bezdin to give Haggadah. We gave Haggadah this way, but otherwise we would have had a requirement one way or the other. You can't learn that from here at all. Fine. The Gemara now says, Yasi Rav Abba v'ka'amar la lahashmaisa de'ed nasa dayan. Rav Abba was talking in the Beis Medrash, and he mentioned this principle, this seemingly complex principle of Eid Nasa Dayan. In the beginning of the Gemara, we said no big deal, and in the end of the Gemara, it seems to be we're like a little bit more dramatic about it. So says the Gemara, Esve Rav Safra le Rabbi Abba, a brisa is brought against Rabbi Abba, who was talking about Eid Nasa Dayan, and it was an inference of our Gemara. It's not only a question on Rabbi Abba, but it's a question from the Gemara that Rav Safra asked to Rabbi Abba on the Shita of Eid Nasa Dayan. What is the case? It's a case from Kiddush HaChodesh. Says the Gemara, 15 lines from the bottom, Ra'uhu Shlosha, Vehain Bezdin. 3 people saw the moon, and they are the Dayanim. Yamdu Shnayim, V'yoshivu Mechavrehem, Eitzel HaYachid, V'ya'idu Bifnehem. What they do is 2 of them become Eidim, they're Dayanim. 2 of them become Eidim. That leaves over 1 of the Dayanim. And then they bring another 2 so that the first 2 Dayanim are giving testimony in front of 3, 1 of whom is a formal Dayan and the other 2 who are kind of the fillers. V'yomru, and in this format, they can then be mekadesh the chodesh. V'yomru mekudash hachodesh mekudash. That is how we sanctify the new moon. She'ein hayachid ne'eman al yedei atzmo, that a person cannot be trusted on his own. Namely, that the first two dayanim cannot give their testimony only to the one dayan. We needed to make sure that they had two other dayanim to total three people who were sitting on the tribunal. But if you say that an aid can be a dayan, then really all three of them are dayanim. What's with the whole getting extra people? Person number 1 and 2 who are giving testimony are dayanim. The third guy who's sitting there is also a dayan. So yes, the first two guys are Eidim, but they're also Dayanim. Why do we need to bring in more people? They're just as good. Lama li kulehai. Why do I have to have all this halabaloo? You're getting 2 extra people that we don't have to bother. Says the
people are strong people. They're not also Dayanim.
They have to be of halachic caliber to accept testimony, but it's similar to Ataris Nadarim. That may not be true actually by Kiddush HaChodesh. It could be that I'm wrong and they're proper dayanim as well, but they're extras because they.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it does say that.
They're not nothing, but they're not.
I don't know if it's like a Taras Nadarim, where as long as you're alive, you can be a dayan, because there are no other standards than being an adult Jewish male. You don't have to read Hebrew. You have to have a clue of what's going on. But okay, read the art scroll, you'll be fine. Fine. So says the Gemara, maybe we have a kasha on our Gemara, because Rabbi Abba was of the opinion that aid nasa dayan, that an aid was able to function as a dayan. Maybe we see over here that an aid is not able to function as a dayan because we forced collecting 2 other people to fill up the tribunal. Says the Gemara, let the 3 of them stay where they are, and they can be Mekadesh the Chodesh. Don't bring in an extra 2 people. And Omar Le, Rabbi Abba says back to him, Afli didi kashili. He said, I raised the same question. You're saying good. I raised the same question. Ushi'ilte le Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, and I asked my Rebbe, who is Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel, the son of Marta, for Rav Yitzchak le Rav Huna. Rav Yitzchak also asked this question to his Rebbe. This is a multi-generational question. Rav Huna lechia bar Rav, lechia bar Rav le Rav. The question went all the way back to the Tana/Amora of Rav. The Omar Lahu, with simplicity, he threw off the question, Rav, and he said, Hanach le'edus hachodesh de'oraisa, the kiyum shtaros de'rabanan. You can't ask. You're comparing apples and oranges, because when we're talking about Kiddush HaChodesh, of course we're going to have a higher standard, and of course we're going to force to fill out the tribunal. That when the 2 dayanim break from the dayanim in general, and they give edus to the one, but by Kiddush HaChodesh that's a din d'oraisa. It's pasnish that you're going to give the edus to one person. Go get 2 more people. Let the front 2 dayanim give edus to the third dayan and 2 other people, and then all is well and good. But v'kiyum shtaros, that's the rabbanon. We're going to stop right here, and tomorrow night, Emir Tashem, we'll learn a blot and a half of Daf Chaf Beis and Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.